Hello, how's it going? I'm Marley. If you're new here, welcome. I'm a second year med student. We just started our gastrointestinal or, GI tract course or block or whatever you want to call it. And at this point in school, I'm pretty comfortable with being able to say that I've really dialed in my study strategies to maximize efficiency and retention. Now, I know it sounds completely nuts, but guess what got chopped from my study strategy in the first month of med school? Written note-taking. Yep, I do not take notes, not in the traditional, professor is talking and I'm frantically writing stuff down. I don't do that. I stopped doing that at least. Why? Because visual information synthesis and active spaced recall are my most effective strategies for handling the complete fire hose of information that you're blasted with in med school. And by visual information synthesis, it's basically fancy words for drawing stuff out, basically taking tons of information and distilling it into diagrams and visuals. And by active spaced recall, I'm essentially talking about Anki, the open source flashcard program, which I've touched on in previous videos. So if you're curious about Anki, how it works, how I've used it, I'll link a video up above that has to do with that. In med school, we have hours and hours and hours of lectures and labs and case studies. I used to spend so much time doing these really detailed annotations on the PDFs and PowerPoints that we were given, and then studying those notes by rereading them later over and over. It took me a month. I figured out the hard way that just didn't work. Reading is a passive form of learning, and it just did not work for me, especially with all the mountains of material I had to cover. I couldn't afford to reread stuff over and over and not have it stick longer than a day or two. It was so frustrating. So I did a whole overhaul of my entire study routine. Anki was part of this overhaul, but I want to focus now on the other part of this overhaul, which was the whole visual information synthesis part, because there are tons of biochemical pathways and mechanisms that are all integrated and intertwined with clinical pathology. All of this is really complex and it does not lend itself to being presented in a piecemeal PowerPoint fashion. Seeing and remembering how everything relates, rather than cramming just isolated bits of information into your brain, is way better for long-term retention. Plus, it's a little more fun, like a creative outlet, And my favorite way of doing this is with an app called Notability. There are other apps like it. There's Microsoft OneNote, GoodNotes, Evernote, but I found Notability to be the most intuitive for me to use and draw with, so that's why I chose it. Okay, so I'm just gonna pull this out and I'll show you kind of what this looks like. So the app looks like this little blue guy right here. Hopefully the lighting stays okay. I know adding a screen kind of throws it off, but so I just pulled this up. This is my giant biochem, all metabolic pathways document, essentially, drawing thing. It looks like kind of a mess, like a rainbow threw up on it, but it's my mess, okay? It's organized in a way that makes sense to me that I can picture it mentally. I hated biochem, and especially all the glycolysis and beta oxidation, all that stuff, but it had to be learned. And it was really difficult to just learn it from PowerPoint. And so this is when I started using Notability last year. You have glycolysis, fatty acid oxidation, and the Krebs cycle. And it's all parallel and intertwined. Everyone who's studied this before knows that these are just so connected. All the metabolism stuff is so connected. And you have to remember how they all connect. But it's really hard without seeing it. So I found this super helpful. And you can see, just as I zoom in, all the tiny writing, all the tiny details. Pyrimidine synthesis? Gross. If any of my biochem professors ever watch this, I'm sorry. You guys are great. It's just, this stuff kills me. So yeah, this is probably what 20 to 25 hours of lecture looks like in diagram form for me. But the best part is that I can take screenshots of this stuff after I'm all finished drawing it out, and then I can basically make Anki flashcards out of those screenshots. So it's I'm combining both the visual synthesis of information strategy with my spaced repetition strategy. That's amazing. That helps me retain for months instead of days, just combining my two best learning methods in that way. And if you're interested in how I do this whole making flashcards out of screenshots and things, let me know and I can do a future video on that. And we'll be done with this. Don't worry, soft landing. One drawback, see what I did there? Drawback, I know, dad joke, I'm sorry. Forget I said it. Rewind. One con of using Notability or another app like it for visual information synthesis is that sometimes drawing things out nicely takes a really long time. Like those drawings and visuals took me hours and hours. They're by no means perfect, like nicely spaced or like super just like visually appealing for the most part. You know, they're kind of messy. So if you can see yourself getting like carried away, making them super gorgeous or super over the top detailed, then maybe this method wouldn't be for you. It might just take too much time. So that's it. That's why and how I switched from a traditional note-taking approach to an Anki plus Notability based study approach in medical school. I hope this was helpful for anyone out there who has to learn and manage a lot of really complex material, and that's, you know, that includes med students, but it's not limited to med students. And if you did find this helpful, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing rest of your day and catch you next week.